when Taehyung accused Jungkook of hiding a secret. Neither of them realized that one conversation would fracture years of unspoken trust. "You lied to me, Jungkook. Don't deny it. Where is she?" Taehyung's voice cut through the dressing room like a blade, sharp and trembling at the edges. The private floor of HYBE Studios was unusually quiet that night, the glossy black walls reflecting the soft white stage lights above, but none of it softened the tension flooding the air between them. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, the kind that pressed against the chest and made breathing feel optional. Jungkook stood near the wardrobe rack, one hand still gripping the sleeve of his tuxedo jacket, his body frozen like he'd just been caught in the middle of a crime he didn't know how to confess to. "What are you even talking about?" he finally muttered, but his voice betrayed him. It wasn't defensive, it was afraid. Taehyung's jaw tightened. His hair was still slightly damp from rehearsal, strands clinging to his forehead, but his eyes were dry. Too dry. The kind of calm that only comes after anger has burned itself out into something colder. "Don't play dumb," Taehyung said quietly. "Everyone's talking. First you disappear after the awards. Then you stop answering our group chat. And now suddenly you show up smiling at your phone, distracted, glowing like you've got a whole second life I'm not allowed to see." Jungkook swallowed. "People saw you with someone," Taehyung continued, stepping closer. "They said it wasn't casual. They said you looked serious. They said you were wearing a ring in Tokyo. So tell me, Jungkook, are you hiding her? Are you married?" The words hung in the air like a verdict. Jungkook's fingers loosened around his jacket. His shoulders dropped just slightly, like his body had already surrendered before his mouth could catch up. "You really think I'd do that?" he asked softly. "To you, to us?" Taehyung laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Then what am I supposed to think? You shut me out. I stood next to you through everything. Scandals, tour, nights when we couldn't even feel our legs anymore. And suddenly I'm the last person to know what's happening in your life." The room felt smaller. The faint hum of the lights above seemed louder than their breathing. Jungkook took a step forward. "You want the truth?" Taehyung didn't hesitate. "Try me." Jungkook exhaled, his chest rising and falling unevenly. For a moment, he looked like he was about to joke, to deflect, to turn it into something lighter. But he didn't. "There is someone," he said. Taehyung's expression didn't change, but something inside him clearly cracked. "But it's not what you think," Jungkook added quickly. "I wasn't hiding her from the world. I was hiding her from myself." Taehyung blinked. Confusion replaced the anger in his eyes. "What does that even mean?" Jungkook looked down at the floor, as if the answer was written somewhere between the cracks. "After last year, everything," he said slowly. "The pressure, the tour, the expectations. I felt like I was disappearing inside the version of me everyone wanted. Then I met someone who didn't see me as Jungkook the idol, just me." Taehyung listened in silence. "For once I didn't have to perform," Jungkook continued. "And I didn't tell anyone because I didn't know if it was real. I didn't want to name something that might disappear. I just wanted something normal, something quiet." Taehyung's shoulders sagged slightly. "I never needed you to perform for me," he said. "You're not a role to me, Jungkook. You're my family. I would have understood." Jungkook looked up, his eyes shining under the lights. "That's exactly why I didn't tell you," he whispered. "Because I knew you would, and I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that if you saw me change, you'd look at me differently, that I'd lose what we have." Taehyung shook his head slowly, disbelief creeping into his voice. "So you chose fear over trust." He stepped back, putting physical distance between them for the first time since the conversation began. "Do you know what it felt like hearing it from strangers first?" Taehyung said. "To feel like I wasn't even part of your world anymore, like I was some backup dancer in your life." Jungkook winced. "That's not fair." "No," Taehyung replied, his voice steady but breaking underneath. What's not fair is me having to wonder if the person I called my brother is building a future I'm not even invited into. The air felt thick, like every unspoken memory had gathered in the room. Jungkook's hands curled into fists. I'm still that person, he suddenly said, his voice rising. But maybe I got tired of always being strong. I've spent years being perfect on stage, in interviews, in photos. I just wanted one thing that was mine. He stepped closer, their faces only inches apart. You think I'm hiding her from you, Jungkook continued. I'm hiding me from you, because I don't know who I am when I'm not everything you expect me to be. The words hit Taehyung like a punch to the chest. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the low hum of the air conditioning filled the space between them. A soft knock suddenly echoed from the door. Both of them froze. Hey, a voice called from outside. Are you guys okay? It was Jimn. Taehyung and Jungkook looked at each other, the tension still burning, the truth only half exposed, the wound still wide open. And neither of them was ready for what would happen once that door opened. The door opened slowly, the soft click of the handle sounding louder than it should have in the tense silence. Jimn stepped inside first, his eyes moving between Taehyung and Jungkook, instantly sensing the atmosphere. Behind him, the hallway buzzed faintly with staff voices and distant footsteps, but inside the room, it felt like time had stalled. Did I interrupt something? Jimn asked carefully. Taehyung didn't answer right away. His arms were crossed tightly over his chest, his gaze still locked on Jungkook, as if Jimin's presence barely existed. Jungkook cleared his throat. We're just talking. Jimin raised an eyebrow. That doesn't look like just talking. Taehyung finally turned his head. How much do you know? Know about what? Taehyung let out a short, humorless laugh. About Jungkook's secret life. Jungkook shot him a look. It's not like that. Then explain it, Taehyung said flatly, because I'm done filling in the blanks myself. Jimin's expression shifted, confusion slowly turning into concern. Okay, now I'm definitely missing something. Jungkook rubbed the back of his neck, his movements restless. People think I'm hiding someone, that I'm getting married. Jimin blinked. Wait, what? Taehyung's voice was quiet but sharp. Not just people, me too. Jimin looked between them. Jungkook. Jungkook exhaled deeply. There is someone, but I'm not married, there's no wedding, nothing like that. Then why does it feel like you've been living a double life? Taehyung asked. Why does it feel like everyone else knows more about you than I do? Jungkook's jaw tightened. Because I didn't want this to turn into a headline. I didn't want it to become something that belonged to the world before it even belonged to me. Jimin slowly stepped further into the room, closing the door behind him. So you decided not to tell us at all. Jungkook looked down. I didn't know how. Taehyung's laugh this time was bitter. Funny. You faced stadiums of people, scandals, hate, rumors, but somehow telling me the truth was the scariest thing. Jungkook didn't respond immediately. Jimin crossed his arms. How long? Jungkook hesitated. Almost a year. The number hit the room like a shockwave. A year, Taehyung repeated. You kept this from me for a year. Jungkook nodded slowly. Jimin's expression hardened. That's not just fear, that's a choice. Jungkook looked up, his eyes tired. I know. Taehyung turned away, packing toward the mirror wall. His reflection stared back at him, looking calmer than he felt inside. Do you know what I thought? Taehyung said quietly. When I started hearing the rumors, I thought maybe she told you not to tell me, that maybe I was some problem you needed to erase from your future. Jungkook looked up instantly. That's not true, she doesn't even know how close we are. That's exactly the problem, Taehyung replied, turning back. She doesn't know because you never let me exist in that part of your life. The words landed heavily. Jimin watched them in silence, finally understanding the weight of what was happening. So what now? Jimn asked. Are you serious about her? Jungkook swallowed. I was considering it. Taehyung froze. Considering what? Proposing. The room felt suddenly smaller. Taehyung stared at him. You were thinking about getting married, and I had to hear it from staff whispers. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair. I bought a ring, but I haven't done anything. I haven't asked. I'm not even sure. Not sure about her? Jimn asked. Jungkook shook his head. Not sure about myself. Taehyung's voice dropped. Then what was that box people saw in your bag? The dinner with her family in Busan. Jungkook stiffened. I was close, he admitted. But every time I thought about actually crossing that line, something stopped me. Taehyung's eyes narrowed. What? Jungkook hesitated, then met his gaze. You. Silence. I kept wondering how you'd look at me, Jungkook continued. If you'd feel replaced, if you'd think I was choosing a different life without you. Taehyung's expression shifted, anger giving way to something more painful. That wasn't your decision to make for me, he said. You didn't protect me. You took my right to feel anything at all. Jungkook's voice cracked. I didn't want to lose you. But you did, Taehyung replied softly. At least the version of me who trusted you without doubt. Jimn finally spoke again. You didn't lose him completely, but you hurt him, and you hurt yourself. Jungkook looked between them, guilt written clearly on his face. I didn't mean to make you feel invisible, he said. You're the last person I wanted to hurt. Taehyung let out a slow breath. Then why does it feel like I'm the only one bleeding? The question lingered in the air, unanswered. Jungkook slowly sank onto the black couch in the corner, his shoulders slumping. It's not just about her, he said quietly. I've been thinking about stepping back, taking a break from everything. Jimin's head snapped up. From the group. No, Jungkook replied quickly. Not quitting, just pausing. I've been going non-stop for 10 years. I don't know who I am outside of schedules and cameras anymore. Taehyung's expression softened slightly. And you were going to figure that out alone too. Jungkook nodded. I was afraid you'd think I was abandoning you. Jimin shook his head. I'm not afraid of you resting. I'm afraid of you disappearing without telling us. Taehyung's voice was quieter now. I'm afraid of losing the version of you that used to run to me when things got hard. Jungkook looked up, eyes shining. He's still here. He's just buried under everything I didn't say. Taehyung stared at him for a long moment, then finally sat down beside him. Not touching, but close enough to feel the warmth between them. Then stop burying yourself, Taehyung said. Because I don't want a perfect Jungkook, I just want the real one. Jungkook closed his eyes, a shaky breath escaping his lips. I want to fix this, he whispered, but I don't know where to start. Taehyung looked at him, exhaustion replacing the anger. Start with not lying anymore, not to me, not to yourself. Jungkook nodded slowly, I promise. The room remained quiet, but something had shifted. The tension was still there, the wounds still open, but beneath it, a fragile understanding had begun to form. Not forgiveness. The fragile calm didn't last long. A knock echoed again at the door, sharper this time, more urgent. 5 minutes, a staff member's voice called from the hallway. Choreography briefing is starting. Jimn glanced at his phone. Namjoon, going to lose his mind if we're late again. Taehyung stood up slowly, his eyes still on Jungkook. We're not done. Jungkook nodded, I know. They walked down the hallway together, but the space between them felt heavier than before. Stylists and managers passed by with polite smiles, unaware that something fundamental had shifted behind the scenes. Inside the rehearsal room, the rest of the members were already there. Namjoon sat at the long table, arms crossed. Hoseok leaned against the wall, scrolling through his phone. Yoongi stood near the mirror, quiet but observant. The moment Taehyung and Jungkook entered, everyone looked up. You missed the first run-through, Namjoon said calmly, but his tone carried warning. Jungkook opened his mouth, but Taehyung spoke first. That's on me. Namjoon raised an eyebrow. That's new. The room fell into an awkward silence. Yoongi broke it. Something wrong. Taehyung hesitated, then looked at Jungkook. You want to tell them? Taehyung asked, or should I? Jungkook froze. Tell us what? Hoseok asked, his voice light but curious. Taehyung exhaled slowly. He's been seeing someone for almost a year, and none of us knew. The words landed like a dropped glass. Hoseok blinked. Wait, what? Namjoon turned sharply to Jungkook. Is that true? Jungkook nodded, his throat tight. Yes, but it's not. You've been in a relationship for a year, Namjoon interrupted, and didn't think it was worth mentioning to the team. I didn't know how, Jungkook said quietly. Yoongi finally spoke, his voice low. That's not an answer, that's avoidance. Taehyung felt the tension rising again. It's not just about the relationship, Taehyung added. He was thinking about proposing. The room went completely silent. Hoseok's mouth opened slightly, proposing as in marriage. Jungkook rubbed his temples. I just thought about it. Namjoon leaned forward, his expression serious. You understand how big this is, right? Not just personally, but for all of us, for the group, for the company. Jungkook looked up. That's exactly why I didn't say anything. And you thought silence was better? Yoongi asked. Silence always becomes something else. Rumors, speculation, distance. Taehyung felt his chest tighten. You know what hurt the most? Taehyung said softly. Not that you fell for someone, but that you decided I wasn't safe enough to tell. Jungkook turned toward him. That's not true. Then why do I feel like a stranger in your life? Taehyung asked. Jungkook had no answer. Hoseok stepped forward, trying to ease the tension. Okay, let's breathe for a second. Falling in love isn't a crime. No, Namjoon said, but shutting out your family is. Jungkook's voice cracked. I wasn't trying to shut anyone out. I was trying to protect something fragile. Yoongi tilted his head. And in doing that, you made everything else fragile too. The truth stung more than any accusation. Taehyung looked down at the floor. Who is she? Jungkook hesitated. Her name is Yuna, he said finally. She's not famous. She works in publishing. We met by accident. Hoseok smiled faintly. So, a normal person. That's why I stayed, Jungkook said. She didn't treat me like I was special. She treated me like I was human. The room softened slightly. But you still hid her, Namjoon said. Yes, Jungkook admitted. Because I was afraid the moment I brought her into this world, she'd stop being mine, and I'd stop being myself. Taehyung's voice dropped. You were so busy protecting your world that you forgot you were part of ours. Jungkook swallowed hard. I didn't want to lose you, he said. Any of you. Yoongi looked at him for a long moment. Then, don't make decisions that erase us from your life. Silence settled again, heavier but clearer. Hoseok exhaled. So what now? Jungkook looked at Taehyung. I don't know, I haven't proposed, I haven't promised anything. I'm just stuck between who I was and who I might become. Taehyung studied his face. Do you still have the ring? He asked quietly. Jungkook froze, then nodded. Namjoon leaned back in his chair. And do you still want to use it? Jungkook hesitated. I want it, but every time I imagine that future, I also imagine what I might lose. Taehyung's chest tightened. Then ask yourself this, Taehyung said softly. If she's the one, why does loving her feel like abandoning us? Jungkook couldn't answer. Yoongi finally spoke again. You don't have to choose between love and loyalty. You just have to stop pretending they can't exist in the same life. Jungkook nodded slowly, the words sinking in. I think I built two worlds in my head, he admitted. One where I'm an idol, one where I'm just a man, and I was scared to let them touch. Taehyung stepped closer. Then stop dividing yourself, he said, because I don't want half of you, I want all of you, even the parts that are confused. Jungkook looked at him, eyes shimmering. You're still my home, Jungkook whispered. Taehyung's voice trembled slightly. Then stop leaving without telling me. Jungkook nodded, I will. For the first time since the confrontation began, something shifted in the room. Not resolution, not peace, but honesty. Namjoon stood up. We'll deal with the company later, the fans later, the world later. He looked at Jungkook. Right now, just don't lie to us again. Jungkook met his gaze. I won't. Hoseok smiled gently. Good, because if you disappear again, I'm showing up at your apartment with a karaoke machine and forcing you to sing sad ballads until you talk. A weak laugh escaped Jungkook's lips. Even Taehyung smiled slightly. The tension didn't vanish, but it softened. They weren't healed, but they were finally facing the same direction again. And for the first time in almost a year, Jungkook no longer felt like he was walking alone. The night stretched longer than any of them expected. Rehearsal ended, the staff cleared out, and one by one the members left the building, each carrying their own thoughts home. The hallway lights dimmed, leaving only the soft glow of emergency lamps reflecting off the polished floors. Taehyung and Jungkook stayed behind. The practice room felt emptier now. No music, no voices, just the hum of the air conditioner and the quiet weight of everything that had been said. Jungkook sat on the floor, his back against the mirror, staring at his own reflection like he didn't recognize it. Taehyung stood near the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city lights flicker outside. You know, Taehyung said slowly, I used to imagine what your future would look like. Jungkook looked up. Yeah. I always thought it would be loud, big, you on huge stages, still smiling like you're invincible. Taehyung let out a soft breath. I never imagined a version of you that wanted to disappear. Jungkook's voice was quiet. I don't want to disappear, I just want to rest from being watched. Taehyung turned to face him, and with her you felt unseen. Jungkook nodded, for the first time in years. Taehyung walked closer and sat down across from him. Did you love her? Taehyung asked. The question hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Jungkook hesitated. I think I was trying to. That's not the same thing, Taehyung said gently. Jungkook looked down at his hands. I cared about her, I still do. She's kind, she's patient. She doesn't ask for anything I can't give. Taehyung's voice dropped. Then why didn't you give her everything? Jungkook swallowed, because part of me was always somewhere else. Taehyung met his eyes. With us. With you, Jungkook admitted. The air shifted. Taehyung didn't respond right away. His heartbeat felt louder than the silence. That's unfair, Taehyung said finally. To her, to me, to yourself. I know, Jungkook whispered. That's why I never proposed. Taehyung studied him. What did she think? She thought I was just slow, Jungkook said bitterly, that I needed more time. Taehyung leaned back against the mirror. And what do you need time for? Jungkook closed his eyes. To figure out who I'm actually choosing, or if I've been avoiding choosing at all. Taehyung's voice softened. You don't have to make every decision alone, you know. Jungkook opened his eyes. I'm scared that if I say things out loud, they become real, and once they're real, I can't take them back. Taehyung looked at him. They're already real, you just kept them locked inside. Jungkook let out a shaky laugh. You always say the things I don't want to hear. And you always pretend you don't need to hear them, Taehyung replied. Silence returned, but it felt different now. Not hostile, just heavy with truth. After a moment, Jungkook reached into his bag and pulled out a small black box. Taehyung's breath caught. Jungkook held it in his palm but didn't open it. This is the ring. Taehyung stared at it. Why are you showing me? Because you're the reason I never used it, Jungkook said, and you deserve to know. Taehyung looked at the box, then at Jungkook. You're giving me responsibility for your future now. No, Jungkook said quickly, I'm giving you honesty. Taehyung hesitated, then gently pushed the box back toward Jungkook. I don't want to be the reason you stay or leave. I want you to choose your life because it's right for you. Jungkook's eyes softened. That's exactly why I trust you more than anyone. Taehyung smiled faintly. Then trust yourself too. Jungkook looked down at the box again. Slowly, he stood up and walked toward the trash bin in the corner of the room. Taehyung froze. What are you doing? Jungkook paused, his hand hovering over the bin. Letting go of something I bought before I knew who I really was. Taehyung watched, his chest tight. Jungkook didn't throw it away. Instead, he closed the box and put it back into his bag. Not yet, Jungkook said quietly. I don't want to run from another choice either. Taehyung exhaled. That's probably the most honest thing you've done all year. Jungkook smiled weakly, low bar. They both laughed softly. Then Taehyung's expression shifted, becoming serious again. What are you going to tell her? Jungkook looked away. The truth, that I'm not ready, that I built a future in my head before I even understood myself. Taehyung nodded. That's going to hurt. I know, Jungkook said, but lying already hurt everyone. Taehyung stood up, and after that, Jungkook met his gaze. I'm going to stop hiding. No more secret worlds, no more double lives. Taehyung studied him carefully. And what about us? Jungkook's voice was steady now. I want us to stay exactly what we are, real, even if it's messy. Taehyung felt something loosen in his chest. Good, he said, because I don't know how to exist in a world where you're not honest with me. Jungkook smiled softly, then don't leave mine. Taehyung looked at him for a long moment, then held out his hand. Jungkook took it. Not like idols. Not like headlines. Just two people holding onto each other in a quiet room, trying to figure out who they were becoming. Outside, the city kept moving. Morning came too quickly. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of the dorm, painting soft lines across the living room floor. The city outside was already awake, but inside, everything felt suspended in that quiet moment between sleep and reality. Taehyung was the first to wake up. He sat on the edge of the couch, rubbing his eyes, the events of the night before replaying in fragments. The practice room, the ring, Jungkook's voice when he said, with you. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt heavier than that. From the hallway, Taehyung heard soft footsteps. Jungkook appeared, still in yesterday's clothes, hair messy, eyes tired but clearer than they'd been in weeks. Did you sleep? Taehyung asked. Jungkook shook his head slightly. Not really, but I feel lighter. Taehyung gave a small smile. Same, which is weird considering everything. Jungkook sat beside him, close but not touching. The space between them was different now, not tense, just careful. I messaged her, Jungkook said quietly. Taehyung's chest tightened. Yuna. Jungkook nodded. I asked if we could talk today in person. Taehyung swallowed, and she said yes. Silence settled between them again. Taehyung stared at the floor. That's going to change things. Jungkook's voice was steady. It already has, I just haven't said it out loud yet. Taehyung looked at him. You don't have to tell me every detail. I know, Jungkook said, but I don't want to hide anything from you anymore, even the parts that make me uncomfortable. Taehyung nodded slowly. That's all I ever wanted. Jungkook hesitated. Are you angry? Taehyung thought about it, the jealousy, the fear, the feeling of being left behind. No, he said finally. I was, but now I'm just tired of pretending I don't care. Jungkook's lips curved into a small, sad smile. You've never been good at pretending. Taehyung laughed softly. and you've been too good at it." They sat there for a moment, listening to the distant traffic, the hum of the building. "I keep thinking about what you said last night," Jungkook said, "about me dividing myself into two people." Taehyung looked at him, and I think you were right. I've been living like I had to choose between being Jungkook the idol and Jungkook the person." He exhaled. "I forgot they're supposed to be the same." Taehyung's voice was gentle. "You don't need to disappear to become human." Jungkook met his gaze. "And I don't need to get married to prove I can have a life." The words felt like a release. Taehyung nodded. "That's a big realization." Jungkook smiled faintly. "Took me 10 years. A notification buzzed on Jungkook's phone. He looked at the screen. "It's her," he said quietly. "She's at the cafe near the river." Taehyung stood up. "Then you should go." Jungkook hesitated, then looked at Taehyung. "Will you be okay?" Taehyung gave him a tired but sincere smile. "I'm not the one you're breaking up with." Jungkook winced slightly. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not," Taehyung said, "but it's necessary." Jungkook stood up, slinging his bag over his shoulder. He paused at the door. "Last night," he said, "when I said you were my home, I meant it. Not in a dramatic way, just in a real way." Taehyung felt his throat tighten. "Then don't make me feel homeless again." Jungkook smiled sadly. "I won't." The door closed softly behind him. The cafe was quiet. Late morning sunlight reflected off the river outside, and the sound of water blended with low background music. Yuna sat by the window, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. She looked up when Jungkook walked in. "You look exhausted," she said gently. Jungkook sat down across from her. "I haven't slept much." Yuna studied his face. "Is everything okay?" Jungkook took a deep breath. "No, and I don't want to lie to you anymore." Yuna's expression shifted, her smile fading slightly. "That doesn't sound good." Jungkook looked down at the table. "I care about you, but I've been avoiding a truth I didn't want to face." Yuna waited silent. "I'm not ready to get married," Jungkook said, "and I don't think I ever was. I thought I wanted a future with you, but I realized I was using that future to escape myself." Yuna blinked slowly. "So, what are you saying?" "I'm saying you deserve someone who's fully here, not someone who's still trying to figure out who he is." Yuna's eyes softened, but there was pain there too. "Did I do something wrong?" Jungkook shook his head immediately. "No, you did everything right, that's the problem. I was the one who wasn't honest." She looked away toward the river. "Is there someone else?" Jungkook hesitated, then nodded slightly. "There's someone who reminds me of who I am when I'm not pretending." Yuna let out a quiet breath. "You should have told me sooner." "I know," Jungkook whispered, "and I'm sorry." Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Yuna finally stood up. "I don't hate you, but I wish you had chosen yourself before you chose me." Jungkook felt the words hit deep. "I'm trying to," he said quietly. "I'm just late." Yuna gave a small, sad smile. "Then don't be late with the next person." She walked past him, leaving the coffee untouched. Jungkook stayed seated, staring at the empty chair across from him. For the first time, the future felt uncertain. But it also felt honest. That evening, Jungkook returned to the dorm. Taehyung was on the balcony, watching the sunset. Jungkook stepped beside him, the city glowing below. "It's done," Jungkook said softly. Taehyung didn't look at him right away, and it hurt, Jungkook admitted, but it felt real. Taehyung finally turned. "I'm proud of you." Jungkook smiled weakly. "For breaking someone's heart." "For stopping yourself from breaking your own," Taehyung replied. Jungkook looked at the sky, then back at Taehyung. "I don't know what happens next," he said. Taehyung leaned against the railing. "Neither do I, but at least we're not lying about it anymore." Jungkook nodded. They stood there together, side by side, watching the city lights slowly replace the sunset. No headlines, no secrets, just two people, standing at the edge of something new, not sure what it was yet. But for the first time, they were facing it honestly. Together, the days that followed felt strangely quiet. Not the empty kind of quiet, but the kind that comes after a storm, when everything is still standing, just rearranged. Schedules continued, cameras turned on, smiles were worn again. To the world, nothing had changed. But between Taehyung and Jungkook, everything had. They started talking more. Not about big things, not about the future, just small, ordinary conversations that used to fill the space between rehearsals and rides home. What did you eat? Did you sleep? Come sit here. Simple words, but they carried weight now. One night, after a late shoot, they found themselves alone again in the practice room. The same room. Different silence. Jungkook sat on the floor, stretching his legs, while Taehyung leaned against the mirror, scrolling through his phone. You know what's funny? Jungkook said suddenly. What? For years, I thought I needed something new to feel alive. A new relationship, a new life, a new version of myself. Taehyung glanced at him, and it turns out, I just needed to stop running from the one I already had. Taehyung smiled faintly. That sounds like something Namjoon would write in a lyric. Jungkook laughed softly. Yeah, he'd make it sound cooler. Silence settled again, comfortable this time. Taehyung put his phone down. Do you miss her? Jungkook didn't answer immediately. I miss the idea of being normal, he said finally. I miss walking into a place where no one knows my name, but I don't miss pretending I was someone else. Taehyung nodded slowly. That makes sense. Jungkook looked at him. Do you resent me? Taehyung's expression softened. For hiding things, yes. For trying to figure yourself out, no. Jungkook exhaled, like he'd been holding that question inside for weeks. I was afraid you'd look at me differently. I do, Taehyung said honestly, but not in a bad way. I see you more clearly now. Jungkook met his gaze. And what do you see? Taehyung thought for a moment. Someone who's tired, someone who's scared, someone who's trying really hard not to disappoint everyone. Jungkook swallowed. That sounds about right. And Taehyung added quietly, someone who matters to me more than he realizes. The air shifted again. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just real. Jungkook looked down at his hands. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about you. Taehyung's heart skipped, but his voice stayed calm. You don't have to label it. Jungkook looked up. Doesn't that scare you? Taehyung smiled gently. It used to. Now I think honesty is scarier than uncertainty, and we've already survived honesty. Jungkook let out a small laugh, barely. They both smiled. Then Jungkook spoke again, softer. I think I've been emotionally leaning on you for years without realizing it. Taehyung tilted his head, and I think I've been waiting for you to notice. Their eyes met. This time, neither of them looked away. Not because of tension, but because for the first time, they weren't afraid of what the other might see. I'm not asking for anything, Jungkook said quietly. I just want to stay like this, connected, without lies. Taehyung nodded. That's all I want too. They sat there for a long time, not touching, but close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. Outside the window, the city lights blurred into soft colors. Inside, something was slowly, carefully shifting. Not a confession, not a romance, but a recognition that whatever they were to each other, it was deeper than labels and safer than secrets. Weeks passed. Fans noticed subtle changes. They laughed more during interviews, sat closer, looked at each other longer than necessary. Nothing obvious, just enough to make people wonder. One evening during a live broadcast, a fan comment flashed on the screen. "Jungkook looks happier these days." Jungkook read it out loud and smiled. "I think I finally stopped lying to myself," he said casually. Taehyung glanced at him. Their eyes met again. And for a split second, the world disappeared. After the broadcast ended, Taehyung nudged him. "You just gave the fandom a new theory." Jungkook laughed. "Let them guess, they always do." Taehyung studied his face. "Do you regret anything?" Jungkook thought about Yuna, the ring, the fear, the silence. "No," he said slowly. "I regret the pain, but I don't regret the truth." Taehyung smiled. "That's growth, I think." Jungkook smiled back. "I think so too." Later that night, as they walked back to their rooms, Jungkook stopped in the hallway. "Taehyung. Yeah. Thank you for not giving up on me when I was at my worst." Taehyung looked at him seriously. "I didn't stay because you were perfect. I stayed because you were real." Jungkook felt something tighten in his chest. "Then stay," he said softly, "even when I'm confused again." Taehyung nodded. "Only if you promise not to disappear again." Jungkook held his gaze. "I promise." They stood there, neither of them moving, the hallway quiet, the lights dim. Not as idols. Not as headlines. Just two people who almost lost each other. And chose not to. Not because they knew what the future looked like, but because, for the first time, they were brave enough to face it without hiding.